This is a shorter story, but I was scared for my life. A while ago, I was on my way home from my best friend's house. She lived 15 minutes away from me by foot, so I always used to walk to her house. That evening, it was already dark, but not that late at all. As I live in an area with many old people, no one was out on the street. I was almost home, just crossing the last street, when I saw a car coming. He rolled down his window and said, "Hey cutie, why don't you come with us?" I obviously said no and wanted to get home, but he didn't get the message. At first I thought he drove on, but then he turned around and went in my direction. I heard him shouting that I should stop and get in the car. As soon as I heard him turn around, I started running. I was only a minute away from my home, so I ran as fast as I could. I got to my house and jumped over the fence like a crazy person. I could hear the car coming around the corner, and I thought I would never make it inside before he would see me. I decided to jump over the second fence. We have two because we have a dog, and our garden is all around the house. I get behind a hedge and hide there. He drove by slowly. I was convinced he would get out of his car, but he didn't. When he was out of sight, I went inside and looked out my window. I saw him again, driving by slowly, but thankfully he just drove away. Although nothing happened, I was scared for my life. So, I was around 6 or 7 at the time. It was spring or summer, I just remember it being warm out. And I was at the end of my driveway playing in the sand. Now, our house is a ranch-style home, set on top of a hill. The driveway was shaped in an upside-down U in front of the house, meaning there was 2 exits. We had a very large yard, evergreens lining each driveway on both sides. A few large oak trees and other trees in front of the yard. The side yard was very overgrown on purpose to keep the dust and dirt from the road from shifting at our house. Due to all the trees, you could not see the driveway from the house. This is important. I was playing in the sand, digging, and playing like little kids do. A car pulls up and stops in front of my driveway. The driver asked me if I knew where such and such lived. I didn't recognize the names and told them no, sorry. I also told them I can ask my parents. I started to get a sick feeling in my stomach. Then the driver tried to coax me into getting into his car, saying that they could drive up the hill with me. I'm like, no, that's okay, and I just bolted down the driveway, running as fast as I could. The car did not follow. In fact, it drove off squealing its tires as they left, so obviously, not needing help finding whoever they were looking for. Mildly creepy. To start off, let me give you a little backstory. My house has a detached garage, and out of the garage is a long driveway with a basketball hoop right next to the garage. Also, you can't see past the middle of the driveway from in the house. So when I was about 6 years old, my brother, who was 9 at the time, was shooting hoops, and I was watching him, just kind of wandering around. I'm standing towards the end of the driveway, about 10 feet from the road. A very stereotypical white pedo van, with the windows blacked out, pulls up at the end of the driveway. There's a bald man who rolls down his window. My brother didn't see what was going on because he was distracted shooting hoops, and I was out of his peripheral vision. The man asked me if I want some candy, very stereotypical, and me not having the stranger danger talk yet. I said yes and started walking towards the van. My brother noticed when the van pulled up closer and turns and sees me walk towards it. He sprints down the driveway and grabs my hand and tells me to run inside. We both start running down the driveway and go into the garage, close the garage door and run inside. When I tell my mom, she immediately runs outside to get the plate number. And this guy was closing the door as she was getting outside and sped off. My brother and I didn't even know he got out of the car, which makes everything scarier. She couldn't get the plate number, and we just locked all the doors while explaining to my mom what happened. At the time, I didn't really get what was wrong, but I got the stranger danger talk right after that. I'm still very grateful for my brother till this day, because if not for him, I could have been killed. Very scary experience looking back, and I'm glad that nothing happened. My mom and sister went out to KFC for dinner for the family and brought one of my sister's friends along. When they came home, my sister was in tears. Apparently they had arrived at KFC. My mom and my sister's friend went inside to get the food while my sister stayed in the car. She was looking down on her phone when all of a sudden she said she heard a knock on the window next to her. She looked up, expecting it to be our mom or her friend coming back to the car. Instead, she saw a dirty looking old man who looked homeless. He had dirty unkempt hair and a dirty gray beard. From her words, he looked like a tweaked out Santa Claus. Luckily, all the doors were locked, but the man kept knocking on the glass, saying, "Let me in," before violently yanking at the door handle. My sister screamed at him to leave her alone, which only made him angrier, and he began to bash the window with his elbow. My sister called 911 as the man was still tugging at the door, attempting to break the window and cursing at the top of his lungs. The worst part about it was that during all this time, not one person stopped to help my sister, even though there had to be plenty of people around, as it was only like 5 p.m. The police were there within seconds, and the man was still at the car trying to get in. At this point, my mom and the friend came out running to the car after seeing all the commotion. Apparently, KFC was really busy this night, and it took a while for them to get their food. The man was arrested and taken to jail, and we never saw him again, thankfully. I was having a conversation about urban legends with my boyfriend and his friend who was in town. The topic came up of, I actually know someone that happened to. Here's mine. Back in 2003, I worked at a clothing store known for inexpensive t-shirts at the mall in this smaller northern city in Massachusetts. I'm a taller woman, just a hair shy of 5'11", with a small medium hourglass frame, light hair, light eyes, and I was 18 when this happened. My friend that I worked with met with me to pick up our check and schedules and shop a little. She's, no joke, 4'11", and looks like she's 12, even though she's in her 30s. We were both pretty active in the hardcore scene at the time, but I looked a little bit more clean cut than her. She liked piercings, I liked tattoos. We were parting ways as we parked in the same lot, but in different sections. I gave her a big hug and walked away. I heard someone call, "Miss," and I turned around. It was a short fat guy with a bottle in his hand coming towards me. "Miss, I got my wife perfume. Will you smell it for me? Tell me if it's good?" "No, fuck off." I kept walking to my car, taking my Nokia out to call Jackie as I walked over. Dude persisted and started hitting notes of agitation in his voice, following me still, increasing the speed of his pace, saying that he just needed me to smell it. Jackie answered, "Some dude is following me. Drive down my row." He heard me on the phone and stopped following me. Jackie drove up alongside me moments later and described a guy, asking if it was him, which I confirmed. He got into some van and drove away, she said. In hindsight, we should have called the cops, but information on human trafficking and kidnapping in 2003 wasn't what it is now. Instead, we just went with a running joke that I was worth more on the black market than her, since she had tons of facial piercings. News about child abductions has become more frequent in my country, so this has led me to an old encounter my mom reminded me of when I was a wee lass. This happened when I was about 5 or 6 years old. My mother was a dealer for Coca-Cola at the time in the rural regions of my city. So that means she and her fellow employees would be delivering crates of Coke to little villages in the boonies regularly. On this particular day, no deliveries were scheduled, and anything that was to be delivered was done, so they were hanging out at the warehouse. My mom figured since it was the end of the week that we should all go on a little road trip with the crew. Everyone agreed, and then one of the crew members suggested we go see the new inland resort a couple towns over. It was nothing fancy, just a large area with a few pools, a pond where you can catch your own fish for meals, and bamboo huts along the side. We all get in the truck and off we go. We all arrived sometime early in the afternoon, and my mom is telling members of the crew what to do. One books a hut, one gets our stuff in order, and someone keeps an eye on me. While I look around, but never wandering off too far, I see an older lady, maybe late 40s, early 50s, looking at me. I was a friendly kid, so I waved and smiled. She just stared at me, so I told the crew member who was looking after me, who in turn told my mom. She informed everyone to watch out for her, and to make sure someone always had their eyes on me. We proceed on. I'm swimming in the pool. Mom and the crew are having a few drinks and eating catfish. This dragged on till maybe 6 or 7 p.m. I stayed in the pool a majority of the time and would just come up for a bite or a drink of soda. But on my last attempt to jump in, I see from the far end of the pool the same old lady. I immediately tell my mom, who looks in her direction and tells everyone we're packing up and going back to the warehouse. We get back, and my mom requests that 3 of the guys stay the night at the old house, and if they could stay up one at a time, just to be safe. Sometime in the middle of the night, I was woken up by my mom telling me to be quiet and follow her to the bedroom that was in the back and leave my slippers on so we didn't make any noise. I asked her why, and she pointed outside, and on the other side of the gate was the same lady. She insisted that I go into the room in the back of the house and stay there till she gets me. I follow, and then I hear her wake up the crew. I hear them leave the house to confront the lady by the gate with questions like, "Who are you? What do you want? How did you follow us?" But my mom said that she just glared at them while mumbling, and now and then tilted her neck, looking past them as if looking for someone. She eventually leaves, and in the morning, I'm taken back to my actual house, and my mom went back to town to continue her job and inform the local authorities of the lady. I never saw the lady again. It's been 20 years. Edit/update. So I asked my mom about the old lady again, and what ever happened with the report. She said that she and 3 crew members that confronted her went straight into town hall before they started work. It's a pretty small town, so it wasn't hard to find someone via description, and they did find out who she was. Local authorities went to a little bamboo hut on the edge of town, about a mile into some wooded area. The plan was to just give her a warning, but when they got to the hut, no one was in there. They checked all the windows, but nobody was inside. Someone did live there because there were ducks and chickens in a small pen on the side of the house. They decided to just leave and update my mom later in the afternoon, but nothing to update. They never saw anyone at that house again. I was 5 years old, visiting South Korea in the late 90s with my family. We were staying with my mom's old friend. There was this one evening, my mom's friend took us kids outside the apartment to play. I remember having fun running around and being 5 and sort of not having much awareness. A woman quickly walked by me, grabbing my hand from the direction of the apartment, and I as a child just held her hand and kind of went on autopilot mode. I remember not having much time to think, but being confused and looking up, but not being able to see much except for her face was blank and focused on walking away from the apartment. It was getting darker as the entrance lights got farther, but before we got too far, my mom's friend called out angrily, and the lady stopped and laughed and said that she thought it was her daughter who played outside the apartment. I didn't really know what was going on or how to process the adult's emotions. I just kind of blanked out and took it for granted. Looking back, I wonder why the lady took me and if it was a mistake. What was she gonna do, or where was she gonna take me? I should really thank that friend of my mom's. So I was about 13 at this time. I was coming up for my mom's birthday, and I had no idea what to get her, so I called my aunt for help. We agreed to meet in town on Saturday afternoon after my piano lessons, so we didn't have to rush. I went to my piano lessons as usual, dropped off my books and backpack at the house, and went to the bus stop to get the bus into town. As I was waiting, a taxi pulled up. The driver rolled down the window and called out, "Are you going to town? I'll give you a lift." Without moving closer to the taxi, I replied that I couldn't afford a taxi and the bus would be here in a few minutes. It was, as usual, running late. The taxi driver became insistent that I get into the taxi and he wouldn't charge me to go to the town. I stood my ground, refusing to get in. His tone became more aggressive as he demanded I get in for the next minute or so. Someone else arrived at the bus stop and the taxi driver sped off, swearing at me for not getting into his taxi. I told my aunt what happened when I met her in town, and she asked if I had got the license plate so she could report the incident. I explained that I didn't move closer to the taxi to get the number, and I first thought he was just looking for a fare. My aunt was pretty sure that if I got into that taxi, I wouldn't have been dropped off in town and taken somewhere. She told me if this happened again, to tell them, "Piss off or I will scream," and if they approach me, to run. The first time was in elementary school, while all the kids were getting out for recess. I think I was in 4th or 5th grade. A random car pulls up and asks me if I seen so-and-so. No one knew what kid he was looking for. One of the two people in the car opened the passenger door of the coupe and said, "Why don't you just jump in and we can drive around to find him?" Being a foolish kid, I was about to get in the car. I hear one of the moms on watch call out and ask who these people were and tell me not to get into their car. The guy that was outside of his car got into the car and they drove off. The mom on watch asked me who these people were, but none of us knew. The second time was a few years later, now in middle school. I was walking home at night from a fun center. It was near where I lived, and the fun center was a place that kids could rollerblade, play arcade machines, and dance in a room set up with a DJ. And in the summer it had water slides. So all the teens wanted to hang out at this place. Me being one of them, I went there a few times. The fun center was about a 5 to 10 minute walk from my neighborhood. I just had to cross the main road, past a fast food place, and a club, which always seemed to be packed. Having rollerbladed and danced my butt off, and having a really great time, it turned midnight, closing time. I got separated from my friends and started to walk home. On my way home, I got stopped by a couple sitting on a bench outside the club. They got my attention and asked if they could see my feet. Me being a dumb 13-year-old, I walked towards them, took one of my shoes off, and then my socks off. They touched my feet and complimented them. I said thank you and put my shoe back on. Then they insisted that they gave me a ride home and that I should get in their car. The couple was very persistent that they'd take me home. I mentioned that I lived close and maybe some of my friends were on their way too, and I just walked away. I didn't think much about it until now that I'm an adult and see disappearance of kids all the time on the news. It makes me wonder if it was the same people in both instances, since the elementary school was 15 minutes away.